This is part 18, Language and Reality. In this part, I'm going to talk about this book, the Trivium, The Liberal Arts of Logic, Grammar, and Rhetoric, from Sister Miriam Joseph. This book explores the nature and function of language. One part of the book categorizes the 7 main parts of the relationship between language and the objective reality of the world, or like just the rawness of reality that exists without language or human thought or words at all. While this book certainly wasn't intended to be used in conjunction with a discussion about magic or word magic, the only difference between the intent of this book, the Trivium, and occult study is really just a matter of perspective. This book is quite a nice addition to any occult or esoteric library. The author has unwittingly explained many esoteric or even magical operations of language in this work, and I'm thankful that she has done so. It is really not a surprise at all that such a gem of occult knowledge would come from a member of the Sisters of the Holy Cross. After all, the source of religious knowledge, or at least a lot of it, comes from the timeless wisdom traditions of the occult. The first of the 7 ways that language maps to reality or attempts to describe reality is this. Quote, "The essence is that which makes a being what it is, and without which it would not be the kind of being that it is." Okay? So essence is the basic ingredient which gives something its particular characteristics, or which separates one thing from another, right? The word S, or the root word S, is the Proto-Indo-European root for the word being, or it means being, essentially. Many words pertaining to being contain the root of S or is. So anything with this S or is in it essentially refers to this state of being. And this state of being, of course, is you're a human being. That is essentially, or that is the essence of a being, is that it's human. That's what makes it different from some other type of being. As human beings, we navigate our reality by knowing the essence of something, only by directly comparing it to something else. So you wouldn't know what something is unless it could be compared or contrasted with something else. That's really the paradoxical nature of our reality, is such that we don't know what light is unless we can compare it to darkness. Hot to cold, right? Male and female, etc. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But the essence of our entire reality is essentially a paradox, right? So essence is something which distinguishes this from that, right? But we need, in a very strange way, this is paradoxical again, we need to understand that the nature of everything is essentially a paradox, so that one thing, that our essence helps us, to understand that an essence of something makes it separate, right? It helps us just really navigate our reality, to know this from that, to begin then to make distinctions, to begin even thinking, to begin to use language and communicate, right? So what something is only possible to know in relation or comparison to some other thing. The second way language maps to reality is, quote, "Nature is essence viewed at the source of activity." So to understand this statement, we need to know that the word nature or natura in Latin is used to describe the course of things. Also, the word natus, which means born, indicates that one's nature is that which they bring with them into this world. It's an interesting idea. As opposed to one's conditioning or programming or nurture, right? Some of which we talked about in the previous section. The source of activity, or the Latin actus, meaning a doing, is integrally linked to what one is, or the very nature of a certain being. So your nature is different than your essence, right? Your nature is essentially the source of activity, or this being, or this doing, this action, right? Associated with this or that being, this or that creature. So activity doesn't merely describe how a lion behaves, but it also describes the doing of nature, how nature came to put the lion into the world in the first place, or the activity of the natural generative force. When I say generative force, I mean creative force, the force of creation, in a sense. This natural generative force which caused or brought about what we refer to as a lion to manifest or to be created into the world of forms in the first place. So it's not so much about the lion, this word nature, right? Or nature being essence viewed at the source of activity. It's not so much the lion itself, but it is nature itself, or it is the natural forces which caused this lion to come about into the world in the first place, right? That's a very nuanced point, but it's a point about our reality that I feel like is often overlooked, and it's a point about our reality that teaches us that we are very much part of that reality. We are brought into this world of forms from nature itself, right? But we have this, there's almost like this two-way street that's happening between nature, right? We bring something with us, but nature has made it that so it manifests us into reality, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic. It's a very interesting way that language maps to reality. Number 3 is, and this entire, pretty much this entire slide is a quote. The individual is constituted of essence, existent in quantified matter, plus other accidents. Okay? So let me explain what this is. Essence is that which makes the individual like other members in its class. So we know that your essence as a human, right? My essence, all of humans share a similar essence, and that essence is human being, right? That's what makes us like other humans. Now, quantified matter is that which makes the individual different from other individuals in its class. So quantified matter could be the shape of your nose, could be how tall you are, how short you are, could be many different physical attributes, right? That's what quantified matter is, okay? And this is what makes one individual human being different from other individuals in its class, because matter, extended by a reason of its quantity, must be this or that matter, right? Which by limiting the form individuates it. This is very nuanced. So the matter that makes a human being has a very finite quality, right? You don't have an infinite, you can't imagine an infinite human being, right? Infinite in physical form anyway, in manifested form. So there is a sort of finite nature to every human. Every human is we have this body, and that is what we refer to as a human being in our manifested reality, right? So limiting the form of each individual person individuates it from another being, which makes us different, right? If we were all the same being, obviously, just part of this, just one, imagine one giant human being, right? There would be no, you couldn't discern one from the other because there was only one, first of all. But the second, that you make several, and you can only make several of a thing in our universe by giving it a limited number or a limited extent of matter, a limited amount of matter, automatically that means that you will have some way to distinguish between them because you have individuated them, because this form of human being, and then you have another form that are separate. They're not exactly the same. Even twins aren't exactly the same. They don't think the same thing at the same moment, right? There's something happening there that individuates them. It's this paradox again, right? And so the other part is this, so we have the individual is constituted of essence existent in quantified matter, which means you have a human being here, you have another one, you have another one. The quantified matter is each different individual plus other accidents. Now, this other accidents are those shapes, color, weight, etc., by which we perceive the difference between individuals of a class. So, and let me back that up because I think I've got, because this can, I mean, it is the first time I read, the first probably 10 times I read the first chapter in the book, or the first couple chapters, I was like, what? So this can get kind of confusing. So first, let's start with quantified matter, meaning we have a set amount of matter to make this person, and then we have another set amount matter, and then another set of matter. So each person's a different set of matter. The accidents, then, I should correct myself. The accidents are those notes, such as the shapes, color, weight, size. The accidents are how much exactly it is, right? What is the shape of the nose? How much material of the nose? What is the shape? What is how did it manifest? Right? Those are the accidents. Those are things that just kind of happen, so that everyone doesn't. Obviously, we know that people are all individuals in some way. You can find an individual trait about someone, even if they're twins, right? So these accidents are what we perceive as the difference between individuals of the same class. The individual within a species, for example, all human beings are essentially the same. Now, when I say we're essentially the same in our essence, because the word essentially, of course, is coming from essence, we are essentially the same, which means we are all human beings. That is our essence. But they are not merely humans, the human individuals are not merely accidentally different. They are individually different. Even if the individuals were as alike as the matches in a box of matches or the pins in a paper of pins, they would be nonetheless individually different because the matter in one is not the same amount of matter in the other, right? Or it's not even the same matter, because if you have two different individuals, you have two different groups of matter. So they're not the same. You have two different things, right? So that's essentially what the individual constituted of essence existent in quantified matter plus other accidents refers to, right? So it's not a matter in the other, or it would not be because the matter in one is not the matter in the other, but it is a different quantity or part, even though the same kind and amount. So even though we're both humans, we're different, slightly different quantities and slightly different accidents, shape of the nose, color of the eye, all those kinds of things, right? Following on the previous idea, there is a difference between the words amount and quantity. This is very interesting. Although this distinction between the meaning of amount and quantity is rarely inspected close enough. The word amount is a combination of a and mount. Remember, syllables will always point the way to how many roots form a particular word. And amount has 2 syllables. A implies one, while mount refers to a mountain or to mount a horse in an objective sense. In the subjective sense or esoteric sense, the action of mounting a horse or ascending a mountain is to move upward. To move upward is to be higher or closer to the heavens or closer to one's divine nature, to move upward, to mount. The word amount refers to moving upward in quality, not quantity. You can amount to something in your life, as in better yourself, but you cannot be more than one person, right? You cannot be more of a person. You can't be more of an amount, right? Because the word amount means to move upward in quality. It doesn't mean to have more. It doesn't mean to have more of the same, right? That's the word quantity. That's what that means. So the word quantity or quanta from Latin refers to how many of a thing or what size of a thing. Quantity is a physical term whereas amount refers to a metaphysical action mapped to either concepts or objects that exist in physical reality. Okay? So the word amount really is it's a metaphysical descriptor of something's quality going up, where the word quantity actually means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these things. There's multiples of these things. There's more of these things. Or this item is getting bigger, right? That's the quantity, right? Where amount is completely different. It means to move up in quality. So you got to be very careful when you use words interchangeably, because if you really take a deep dive into word meanings and their origins, you'll find all kinds of very nuanced, very slight yet important distinctions between many of the words we use. So this is the kind of frame of mind that you want to get into if you ever read this book, The Trivium, right? You've got to think so precisely. You've got to train your mind to think precisely. And it's not easy to do, right? This book is a very difficult book to read. So I should mention that the word syllable is comprised of syl, S-Y-L, or sin, which means to come together, and the word lobble, because there's 2 syllables, and actually there's 3 syllables in the syllable, right? Syllable, syllable. Yeah, so lobble would actually be 2, and I would think that the a in lobble would mean 1, but maybe not. So syllable's 3 syllables, and it means, sin means together, and lobble actually comes from the word lemma, meaning to take. So a syllable means to take together, and which makes sense, right? You're taking words together. You're taking roots together. Take them together. So the word together could just as well be to gather, right? And it would mean pretty much the same thing. The 4th way language maps to reality is, quote, a percept is the sense apprehension of an individual reality in its presence. This refers to how you interpret, think, and feel about what you see right in front of you in the present moment. Okay? The word inter, from interpret, derived from the Old Persian word antar, means among or between, whereas the second part of interpret, the suffix you could say, pret, comes from the Proto-Indo-European word per, which means in front of or through, that which is right in front of. So that's that which is among you, that is right in front of you, how you interpret, right? That's what a percept is. So a percept, in the sense apprehension of an individual reality in its presence. So it's what you see right in front of you is a percept. That's the fourth way language maps to reality. And that's probably the most primary, if you think about it. It's something right in front of you that you might label. You might put a word label on, right? You might assign some sort of concept to it, right? But don't forget that it exists without that word or that label, right? Now this is an interesting one. The fifth way language maps to reality is, quote, a phantasm is the mental image of an individual reality in its absence. So if a percept is the way that let's say a percept is the way that something meets your senses in the present moment, then the phantasm is something that it's a mental image of your perception in its absence. So it's something you might be imagining to be there, right? It's something that you might have seen before and are imagining right now. Or it's something that is not really in front of you, but you're imagining anyway. That would be a phantasm. Not, of course, to be confused with the Phantasm series of films. This term relates to the illusory powers of the mind. It's where we derive the word phantom. If a percept is sense apprehension in the present moment, it's what you're seeing right in the present moment, or how we interpret what is directly in front of us, then a phantasm is a mental image of our reality of something which is not directly in front of us. A phantasm can include a sense apprehension and seem very real indeed. People can have a phantasm and swear what they saw happened, or swear what they see is happening right before them is actually real when it really is not. We would call that a phantasm. So that's the fifth way that language maps to reality.